guys, Jessica Henry here. I'm just so excited to start this next 2-week session. In this session we are going to be discussing drawing and maybe painting horses. I think that in every education it's good to have a balance of understanding just some basic animal anatomy. It seems that many animals that we would be interested in drawing tend to have an anatomical structure of a horse. And so we're going to start with that in the first year here of Renaissance Academy of Fine Arts. When I think about the dog, the cat, giraffe, pigs, whatever, they all have that four-leg structure as we're used to seeing in the horse. All we're going to do in this lesson is just a very simple drawing. I will give you a worksheet with the drawing. The idea is to get you thinking along the lines of anatomy and taking a picture of a horse and just drawing it without thinking about it being a horse per se, but I want you to start thinking about, hearkening back to our drawing lessons, just about some of those topics we discussed about negative space and drawings with plumb lines and so forth as you're working on your drawing. But now we're going to incorporate a little bit more of the anatomy knowledge. So when you have that knowledge and you go forth drawing using the tools that you have already learned, then you're a lot more likely to really truly understand what it is you're drawing. All right, here we go. To begin with today, all we are going to be using is just a basic piece of paper and pencil. It doesn't matter if you're using just a regular school pencil or whatever. I happen to have a 6B because that's what shows up best on camera. So use whatever you have. All right. I'd like to take a moment before we begin to talk about some books and artists that have been instrumental to me in my drawing career. The first equine artist that I remember was Sam Savitt, and I do not have his book anymore, but I have other books that were very instrumental in my development. This is an artist, she's living still. This is Bev Doolittle, and my dad always collected her prints, and I would sit and just marvel at the quality of her draftsmanship in horses. And the earliest recollections I have of drawing was when I was 4 years old, drawing horses. And this book has been really used and abused, but her work is absolutely breathtaking, and these are watercolors. And I just wanted to point out if you can see all of these horses in here, and they all have different personalities and characters, and their ears are doing different things and listening. So check out Bev Doolittle. Her equine understanding and anatomy was absolutely fantastic. So that's Bev Doolittle. And this is an artist his name is Alfred Munnings. He's from England. And this book I bought at Sotheby's in London in 1996. So it's definitely been used and abused quite a bit. So this one, I would look into Alfred Munnings. His specialty was horses. And he did a lot of the race horses. And I love these too. Just anatomical sketches, studying bone structure, and you know, just so that he had that understanding of what we're actually looking at and how they move. And so these are some of his paintings. He was more of an impressionist, but horses definitely were his forte. Look at the character in that horse's face. So this is Alfred Munnings, and check him out too. Look at this beautiful. Look at this understanding of the action in this leg. Isn't that beautiful? Beautiful work. All right, so, and then this other artist, and I have no idea how to pronounce his name. Géricault? I can guarantee you I'm saying that wrong. Groicault, whatever. His horses were fabulous. He was from France, I believe in the 1800s. I'd like to read it, but it's in French and Japanese. I bought this at the Louvre when I was in Paris. And again, it's been used and abused over 100 years ago. But he really did an excellent job studying horses and their anatomy and their different structural, just their tendencies for different breeds and their different ways that they move and all this. I thought that this drawing was lovely, and I wish I could share these, but so it's all right. We're sharing them here. These are etchings over here. And I will write this name on our member page. Look at these. Look at how many horses he did. They're just gorgeous. gorgeous horses. He was a very, very talented artist. And I'll write this name on our Renaissance Facebook page so that you can have that for reference too. This book is a book put out by Dover. It's obviously been used and abused as well. I wish that these were copyright free because I would be printing these off for you. But this book, $10.95, I'm not sure what it is now. It's probably not much more than that. But there's excellent plates in here on understanding equine anatomy. They used to dissect the animals to really get in there and figure out what was going on. This is a great tool for artists. And they don't just stop with the horse. They have the lion and the rabbit and the cat and all kinds of things in here. But look at those horse head plates. Understanding the hoof seems to be a great challenge for many artists. So I'm going to talk about some of these things today. And I'm just going to go over some of the anatomy, and then I will include in our worksheets just a drawing that you guys can work through. Okay, so let's jump in. Okay, so the first thing I want to discuss is just the basic overall anatomy of a side shot of the horse. I'm going to use this as a reference, and we're just going to kind of take apart you know, what the different bones are and what they mean. Okay, so when I teach people to draw horses, I like to begin with the front of the horse and the back of the horse, just the shoulder, and I tell them, just draw an egg, 2 eggs, pointed towards each other, about yay distance apart, and I kind of just keep it loose, like that. And what that is, represented on here, and I can draw on here, it's pretty old, so it's this egg and this egg. Okay, so inside these eggs, what we have is this large shoulder bone right here. Okay, that's the scapula. And these, there's 2 of them, obviously, one on each side, and they come up like this, and then you have the point of the shoulder right in here. Right there is called the point of the shoulder. Scapula. This doesn't go all the way to the top. What that you do have that goes all the way to the top is called the withers, and that's right there where the saddle sits. Okay, and then that comes down, and believe it or not, this point here is called the elbow. So the point of the shoulder comes down, and you have the horse's elbow right there, and it's typically right under the top of the scapula. Okay, so we're going to jump now to the back. And you have the point of the hip up here. That's this area right here. It comes down like this. You have a bone that sort of sticks out like this. That's their pelvis bone. Okay, and then it comes down to, this is their kneecap right in here. Okay, it comes down like that. So that is their kneecap right there. So what you have essentially on a horse or dog or pig, anything, is a greater than, less than sign. Or I guess this is less than, greater than. Okay? So I always tell people when they're beginning a drawing, whether it's a dog or anything, start out with your 2 eggs. I'm going to have all kinds of little sketches on this paper. So your dog would have a shoulder and a hip. And the action of their legs is as follows. Oops. Well, that happens sometimes. Back on track. So yeah, you have this action of the knee coming out like this, and the hock. This is called the hock, right at the back, like this. Okay, so these bones move. If you pick up the horse's back leg, this angle like this tightens. Okay, every time a horse moves its front leg, this angle tightens or opens up. If they're jumping or reaching out with their leg, it'll open, of course. Okay, so there we go with our basic foundation for that. Now you have a vertebrae, and of course it connects the scapula and the hip bone. So this is the withers, and there's this long back right here, slight curve, coming up over the hip, and then the tail is an extension of the vertebrae. Okay? So it just sort of hangs down like that and comes to an end. But the neck starts, it doesn't go all the way along this way. like what we often think. The vertebrae is deep inside the neck bones. Oftentimes we think of the vertebrae being along this way, and it's not. It's inside like that. So we are going to come out of the spine like this and think about that going up like this. Okay? You can still draw the top of the neckline if you want, just to get a continuation of that feeling. All right, so we have the top line done. Now I like to just make the remainder of the shoulder here as it comes down. There's a fleshy muscle that comes over the scapula right in here. Rounding out the point of the shoulder, you have the chest. I'm going to forget about the leg for now and then just draw the barrel. So the barrel starts at about the elbow here, comes up and tucks up behind the kneecap back here. So barrel, this is all barrel rib cage in here. Okay? So it comes up like that, and then the hind end fills in where that point of the hip here sticks out, and then it comes like this. Okay, so that's the essential beginning of the horse's body. Now the neck comes out at about the point of the shoulder down here, depending on the breed and the horse and if it's a male or female. Male horses, especially stallions, tend to have much thicker, more muscly necks. Okay, now the head. The head really, I'm going to draw it down here so you can see it a little bit better. The head is essentially, this is just in a nutshell what I tell people, basics of drawing horse heads. You have a circle, and then you have a smaller circle, and then you connect the top and the bottom. Okay? Essentially, that's what there is to the horse head. The ears, they kind of come out at about, on each side of the head, once you start to crest the circle and go back down to the neck, that's about where the ears are going to come out. And they pivot, they can move like this to help show which direction the sound is coming from. They'll turn their ear that way. And ears are sort of like eyebrows on a person, that you can always tell a horse's emotions or if they're sick or sad by the way they flick their ears. Okay, so now I'm going to sort of erase these two circles inside this head and going to refine, actually I'm going to ghost out the lines. That's what I call this, ghosting out the lines. You can still kind of see them, but they're not very pronounced. So just going to come back through here and work on this outside contour. So there's a little bit of a bulge for the forehead. It comes down and dips. And then you have another bulge where the bone of the sinus cavity makes its presence known on the horse head. Just a slight bulge right there. Different breeds have different pronouncing features there. I worked on drawing some Lipizans for a while, and they had much more pronounced Roman noses. Okay, coming around to the muzzle. Now, when I studied drawing horses as a child, I had Sam Savitz's book, Drawing Horses, and he always described the lower part of the muzzle like a teacup. Okay, so here's a teacup with a little handle. And that's always how he described the lower part of a horse's muzzle. So the top part is about like that. The bottom part is the teacup. And there it is. I don't get real carried away with drawing the detail of the mouth. I think it can be distracting, and you don't really see it very much anyway if you put a tone of gray over the muzzle. Okay, so now I'm going to draw the nostril. The nostril is mostly like the number 6, okay, or like a jelly bean. You have the top part of the muzzle coming in and tucks into the cavity, and then it comes out and you have a larger sort of belly down below. So let's put that over here. Okay. And a lot of times it just takes observation to see exactly where to place the nostril. Many times we want to slip in 2 nostrils or whatever because we understand that there are 2, but you don't always see them. And so it's important to take very special care and attention to where it's located in relation to the distance of the outside of the muzzle. All right, so we got our teacup done. Under the jawline here, we have a little bit of a dip here, and then it comes and we have a nice sort of rounded, where the lower bone of the jaw right here is. So I give that a little bit of definition, because there's not a lot of flesh under the horse head right in here. All right, and then the big jaw part. So I don't usually draw it as a great big half C, like a D, because you do have more flesh on the horse's head up here, but you don't have the flesh down here, about where the top of that jaw has a pronounced effect on the horse's face. It sort of embraces that whole eye cavity and protects the teeth and mouth. So that's what this bone is right in there. So we have that pronounced feature right there. And then the eye cavity, I'm going to draw it a little larger than I need it. The eye's going to fit in that vicinity. See, it comes up and around like this. And then we have some sinus cavity lines in there. I'm going to darken this whole muzzle in so you can see that it looks fine without drawing the whole mouth in. You can just suggest it if you want. They kind of look sad. They kind of have that little sad little, where their mouth takes that turn downward. Okay, so there's that. And then let's get the eye in. Now the eye really is just shaped like, I do a really simple eye when I'm teaching. Of course, depending on the angle of your horse and what you're doing, eyes can take on different shapes, but typically a horse eye is shaped like a chubby fat diamond. Okay, about like angles this way, angles this way. So I keep it fairly angular. They kind of have that sad little shoot above their eye, and it comes down. And then they have a little bit of a tear duct, and then it's rounder. It's a little rounder down here. So when I shade, I try to keep a highlight right in that passage there. So this is obviously a very close-up of the eye, and that's a very simple how you can get that in there. And I try to draw a few little lines and crinkles around the eye just because it makes it look larger and more expressive. All right, so let's get that in here. I grew up with Arabians, and they have such large, beautiful, expressive eyes. Lovely horses. Okay, I'm going to darken in this shadow. They have a divot, a dip above their eye socket. If you watch them eat, that bulges in and out, and it's kind of interesting. So I'm darkening around there a little bit. And that's pretty much, in a nutshell, what you need to know for the horse's head. Now, the flesh of their neck, this is called the throat latch, right down under here, under the jawbone, comes out at about where that jaw sort of starts to curve and go up. So we're going to draw that going down. So maybe I should quick draw it up here. So let's do this again up here. Circle. Circle. Top line, bottom line. I'm checking the size for the body. I think it's too big, so let's shave that back a little bit. That's better. It might even be too low on the neck. Maybe I should raise it up a little. It's easy to make adjustments if you don't get too precious with it too soon. So if you get drawing all the little details as you're going around and around and around, what happens is you don't feel that you can erase when you've made great big mistakes. Because, oh, but that head is so good, and now I have to erase it because it's too small or too whatever. So you want to just make sure that you allow yourself, you know, is that in the right spot? Does that look good? I don't know. Let's see what happens if I move things around. I'm going to forget about the ears for now. Let's maybe give this a little bit more girth. Is that it? Girth, width up there. Checking my overall lines. This could use a little bit of TLC there. dip down in the back. Let's work on that. So I'm kind of just taking in this whole view. I think that head is just fine for the size of everything else I have going on here. All right, and I'm going to come back up in here and put in a little bit more of that information for the horse head. And I have a fun project we're going to do here when I'm done with this. In fact, I grew up on a horse farm, and in fact that's where I was born. My mother was an equine specialist. She showed horses, trained horses. My earliest memories were crawling on horses' backs, just old enough to walk. Crawling on their backs and kicking them till they got up early in the morning. True story. But she was also a very talented artist, and she didn't draw very often, but when she did it very well. And so I have one of her drawings, when I was about 15, we started together taking art classes and under Harvey Schrader in Elk River, Minnesota. And she also started, I couldn't drive yet, but she was interested in learning how to draw better, and she studied with Harvey a little bit, and he taught her how to use the grid method. So she was able to do some drawings based off of just using a simple grid. And so the drawing that I would like to kind of work on together here, we're not going to do it to the full detail and completion that she did, but I would like for us to just play with it and see what we can come up with. And I have that with me today. So getting this in place. All right. So sometimes the nostrils, just like, as you saw, just the letter 6. And shade this in a little. I do think that that muzzle is a little bulky, so I'm going to shave that down. Bring this up a little. Alright, so, and the ears, I will talk about the ears. They are shaped, I always said they're shaped like calla lilies, so I'll draw one up here. They have, here, I'll just start drawing it. This is the back of the ear, where it comes out of the horse's head, and then the side, or the opening, comes like this, and the outside wraps around the inside. And then the top has this lovely little point, and it comes down like this. So the back of the ear shapes around it, like that. And then the other ear, you have forelock in the middle. The other ear comes like this, top and around. The back goes sort of like that. So you can refine those shapes. I would encourage you to look at photo references for these, because different breeds have different shaped ears, and so if you're drawing a quarter horse, it's going to have really different ears than an Arabian. I tend to draw ears that look like they came from an Arabian. They have pointy little curly ears, so pretty and cute. Stallions have very short ears. Geldings and mares tend to have longer ears. Okay, so very simple ears, about like that. So that is in place there. Like that. Okay, now the legs. We have the legs coming down, like from, this one's from the elbow up here. So we've got the femur bone, and I like to represent the knee with a circle. So we're just gonna, here, I'll put the other one in there just because it's weird to not have it. Knees are pretty similar together. They wouldn't be exactly in line with each other because you've got a whole body in between this leg and the other leg. So we're going to represent that as being a little bit further away. So then this back leg, we have it coming down The hock is typically the hock is this lower part, right under the point of the hip. And that is represented by this bone and the cannon bone. You want to check to make sure that these are in line with each other. I remember as a kid getting them off and I'd just put the horse standing on a rock or something. So, okay, and then let's put this guy right back here. Like that. All right, so now we're going to build the leg up with some muscle tone. So this chest comes down, but the forearm comes out like that. You've got the strong forearm muscle. The back of the leg doesn't appear to be quite as strong, and it tucks up around that elbow. And there's not much flesh around the kneecap. And I'll do a close-up of a hoof right here. So what we have is the fetlock. Get my eraser. We have the, oops, let's put this. Fetlock. This is the pastern. So the cannon bone comes like this. The pastern. And then we have underneath the fetlock, we have what's called the beginning of the hoof. And this part on a hoof is very sensitive to a horse. It's called the coronet band. Okay, down here under the hoof they're called the bulbs. I'm giving you all this just so that you can know what you're doing when you're drawing your horse. This is the hoof. And hooves are at about 48 to 51 degrees. Not really 45. You wouldn't want to go 45 because that would actually hurt the horse. So about 48 degrees to 51 degrees, if you care. Round that toe and then bring it back to the heel. Very simple. These angles here are important to get those parallel. Okay, so there's that. Inside this pastern here there are sinews and things like that. This hair here tends to grow, and you've got this roundness of the fetlock, and then it goes up. Okay, so the hoof is actually like your fingernail, and the fibers of a hoof grow in the direction that the hoof is growing in. So, but like that, and you got some hair, fur coming from there down like this. You can give it a little bit of, dress it up a bit, and get rid of that circle. And there you have it. So let's put it over here. Angles, watch those angles. Okay, and the other leg back here. All right, so that's where we are with that. Back leg, you have the stifle. This is the flank right here. That's kind of squishy. If you go up and touch a horse right there, it kind of squishes in. This is the stifle. Then you have this. It's called the gaskin. And my mom used to always say, that's where the power comes from. And so I always called it the gas can. So that's that. There's this big muscle right here. Of course, not as big as their hip, but you get the idea. So this is the hock, and it comes out like this. It's actually, here, I'll do a close-up. So the hock comes down, and it's a bulbous sort of thing right here, because inside here there's a bone right here, and it's designed so that as they pick up their leg, it flexes with the tendon. The tendon is in there, and the bone is right here. Okay, so you have the gaskin and the hock, and then the cannon bone. Okay. So we have this cannon bone coming down. I think I put all that in the wrong spot, but and then the fetlock. And then the pastern. Okay. Just to give that a little bit of a correction there. And the back leg there. Okay, so that's about the extent of it. Now the tail, you want to just think of each of the hairs as though they're coming out of the tailbone, which is all that's happening there. So we're going to go right over that hock that I drew and just let the tail just hang. Very graceful. And the mane comes out of the crest of the neck. And it gets shorter here at the withers. And then their throat has a little bit of definition. I'm going to erase some of these things in here so that we can just kind of focus on some of the internal anatomical features here. Muscles and things. So I like to just put in some of these indications that we had worked so hard drawing, those bones and so forth. Okay, the hip bone. I'm going to give him a little bit more muscle back here. It's kind of looking scant. And this gaskin comes up like this. And I think that's pretty good there. There's often this muscle right back here that kind of defines that hip bone. I don't like what's happening here. As it comes up to the tail. Get that some interest there. All right, now you can always go back through and sketch however you want. And I will show you what we are going to do after this. Okay, so this is the drawing that I was telling you about by my mother, and I thought that it would be interesting for us to do this. And I'm going to share this on the worksheet, and what I want you to focus on is this negative space in here and up here as you're thinking about plumb lines and drawing things vertically that way. So I will give you a brief start on how to begin with this, and then I will share a copy of this on your worksheets, and you can do all the detail and things that you want to make your drawing a finished work of art. Okay, so when I'm beginning a drawing like this, it's a little more complicated, and you do have some issues here to deal with. And just like I was talking about with the initial sketch of the horse, I did start out with the shoulder and the hip. So what I want to do on here is to get those essential places in items in place. So I'm going to start with getting the hip here and the shoulder here in the correct relationship on my paper. And just like when we did the owl, we did it the same size. It's called sight size. We're going to do that on here too. So I'm going to put this on your worksheet about this size too. So to begin with, I'm making a mark, just a simple mark. That is going to represent the top of this horse's hip. Now I want to figure out how far down it goes. So my thumb here is going to represent, it's going to stay at the top of the hip, and right about where this muscle is, I'm going to put the tip of my pencil Okay, so there is that distance. Over here, I've made the mark that represents the top of the hip. I'm going to put my thumb there. And with the tip of my pencil, make a mark and check. Okay, so I'm going to bring that up a little bit. And that's how big this circle is going to be. Okay, so I'm making that. I'm just going to loosely draw in what I need for that circle. Okay, that's about all you need at this moment. Now I'm going to draw the next one. Remember I said I have the two circles. So they're about in line with each other. Remember, this is the withers, and that's the point of the hip, these two key places. So I'm going to get the withers in, but my next question is how far over is that withers from this point here? And if you have your drawing at home, you can make marks on it. I put plastic over this so that I didn't get anything on my mom's drawing. So I'm going to use, okay, there we go. All right, so there's that. So I'm going to measure how far over the withers is, putting the point of my pencil on that point of the hip, and my thumb here is going to be right on the withers. So that's how far over the top of the next circle is going to be. So coming over here, let that fall. There's the point that was over here. Now that my thumb is going to be the point of the withers, right there. So that is the distance of this right in there. Okay, so that means my other circle has to fit in here. So how far down does that circle go? There's the top mark. My thumb is going to stay right on that mark there, and I'm going to put the tip of my pencil on this horse's elbow. Remember I pointed out where the elbow was? So we come over here to our drawing, tip of my thumb at that mark. I'm going to tip my pencil up and make a mark that way. Check my measurement. There we go. So this egg shape goes in there. And that's what I've allowed myself, this passage. Okay, now I want to figure out, let's just draw, let's block in where I'm going to go with the back. And the tail comes down about this way. We're not going to draw the tail yet. Just to give yourself some parameters. Nothing here is spot on accurate yet. I'm just going to give you the bones that you need here to start your drawing. And then I'm going to send you loose. There you go. Now you're all set. Okay, so here's the elbow. Okay, so I'm just looking at these angles down here under the belly. And to me, I feel that that pretty much represents where we're going to go with the horse's body. All right. So now I want to draw this horse's neck and head. A really easy way to do that is to focus my attention on this negative space back in here. So let's figure out from the point of this shoulder right here, what's the distance in here? And then we're going to draw this negative space back here. So, putting my pencil, let's go this direction. I'm going to put my thumb right on the point of this shoulder and the tip of my pencil at his muzzle. A little bit like that. So that's right in there. Things are often not as wide as we think they are. So, let's see, did I get that right? I'm going to go from this direction. You always can double check your work too. Okay, there we go. So now I'm going to draw this negative shape back here. Point of the shoulder. Not worried about the detail under the whole chin and all that yet, but just to get this basic shape back in there. Okay, just like that. Now I'm going to draw the top part of the neck as it comes up. I'm going to measure the distance from this, remember we call it the throat latch, up to the top of the crest. That's the crest where the neck comes up between the ears. So taking my pencil, putting the tip of my pencil at the crest and my thumb at the throat latch. That's that distance. Come over here. Now I'm going to take the tip of my pencil and mark the top of the head. That gives me some parameters there to work in. The neck comes down like this. So the head, I'm going to just sort of block in and give you guys that freedom to work on all of that information on your own, because remember, I'm just giving you the essentials here. The ears are going to come up about this vicinity. I'm marking an eye right about there. Okay, now getting this knocked out. Now what we're going to do is focus on this negative space in here in between the legs. Okay, so I already have my elbow in place right here. And so looking at that, I have this, it's almost like a capital letter D. So let's draw that in here. About how far down is that hoof? So let's go from the elbow to the bottom of the hoof. Point of the pencil at the elbow, thumb at the bottom of the hoof. See how easy drawing is? Seriously, anyone can do this. If everyone knew how easy drawing is, I think we'd have a lot more people saying that they can draw. Okay, so there's the hoof. And we've got this angle in here. And then this other hoof comes down. We'll deal with the hoof later. But I just want to see where the tip of this hoof falls in relation to this hoof. So let's draw a plumb line. So the tip of this hoof, we're going to go straight up. You may want a T-square for this. I'm putting this right on the edge of the paper, like that. Okay, see that? Now you can come over to your drawing and right at, where is that? About the shoulder. I'm going to put it on the edge of my paper and draw the same plumb line. Okay. So that means that, oh, my paper shifted. How good is that? Okay, there we go. Make a mistake, just fix it. So the tip of the hoof comes to this plumb line. And now I have this whole new negative space in here, which is just a long, slender, almost like a whole nother leg shape in there. So I'm going to draw that as it's compared to the plumb line for the other leg. That's the outside. And there we go. That's where that one's going to come from. And then this one, that actually is closer to that. Now this is a smaller D. That makes it even easier. Oh, we were going to measure this. Okay, so from this plumb line, how far over is the tip of that hoof? Thumb at the hoof, the pencil tip at the tip of that hoof. There, it's about like that. Okay, so the hoof of this extended leg will come about like that. So that means I have to fit the pastern, the fetlock, and everything in this region. Alright, so all of that detail and information can fit in there. All right. I'll try to not let that shift. So now we have the negative space under the belly to deal with. So let's draw another plumb line. Let's go right from, oops, where are we here? The back toe. Okay, let's cut this whole thing in half. There we go. Okay, so on here, where's that other plumb line gonna go? Well, let's measure over how far over, and you can even actually measure. Okay, so that's right on that line, and we're at exactly 3 inches. So I'm gonna come over here, put this on the 3 inches. Remember, side size means it is exactly the same size, so I can just measure with 3 inches. So here's that plumb line, and that is at the toe of the back foot. Okay, so where is that in line with the other foot, front hoof? So here's the back front hoof, and it's in line with the back far hoof. So this one comes a little bit lower. So if this one is here, and the back one is here, then that means this one is going to be just a little bit lower. Okay, so now we've given ourselves this entire parameter to work in. Here's the bottom of the hoof, and then we have this whole negative space area in here. So I'm going to bring this stifle in a little bit, the gaskin, and then down the cannon to the hoof. And then the flank is right in here. And you can work out all the detail in there if you should so choose. In the back, there's the hock, cannon, like that. Okay, so I'll let you work out the hoof in there. And then you have the negative space back here in between the back legs. And where does that start? We're going to cut that right there. It comes over this way. And I'm only drawing this. I'm not worried about the leg. And we know that it's going to come down to here. So I'm just judging where I see these angles and turns. And so there's that back leg. I'm flicking my eye back and forth between these two all the time. We don't have that back hock because it's covered by that beautiful glossy tail. So let's get that tail in place. Comes up. Remember, the tail is an extension of the vertebrae. And then there's this negative space passage back in here. Where it comes out, that's the dock of the tail. Comes down. It has this beautiful cascading quality, like that. Okay, so now let's come over here and we'll get a little bit of this mane in so it starts to feel a little bit more complete. And the forelock. And this throat latch muscle that is so identifiable. All right, so that should give you the bones to start your drawing, and you can add all the detail that you want or just get it to this place, because either way the object is to learn how to start a picture. Detail anyone can work through and get in place, but getting it to this place is the most critical part. All right. Okay, well that wraps up our drawing today, and I hope that this has been helpful and that you can take some of these tools and use them for your own purposes, whatever it is you want to work on drawing for animals. Next week we're going to talk a little bit more about capturing some of that personality and sparkle in their eyes. Okay, thanks so much.